I remember the way silence echoed in my home more than anything else. Silence between me and Daniel. Silence at the dinner table. Silence in the bedroom. Silence that grew so thick it sometimes felt like I could choke on it. My husband was a good man, responsible, hardworking, dependable. But in his pursuit of being everything for everyone else, he forgot how to be present for me. He forgot how to look at me the way he once did. For months, I convinced myself it was just a phase, that marriage was supposed to evolve into something quieter. Yet, late at night, when I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I couldn't ignore the emptiness blooming inside me. A woman can live without grand gestures, but not without being seen. And I hadn't felt truly seen in a long time. That's when Ethan began to appear in the cracks of my days. He wasn't a stranger, but he wasn't someone I ever imagined would matter either. He was my neighbor, a few years younger, always cheerful when he waved from across the street. At first, it was nothing more than polite exchanges, small talk about the weather, casual greetings when we crossed paths. But then, he began to notice things. New haircut, looks good on you. You've got that tired look. Everything all right? Funny, Daniel never comes around these days. His words slipped into the places where my husband's absence left me hollow. Simple, ordinary remarks, yet they carried the weight of acknowledgement. For the first time in a long while, someone noticed me, the curve of my smile, the shadow beneath my eyes, the way I hesitated before answering. And with every conversation, I felt a spark small at first, like the flicker of a match, but dangerous all the same. I told myself it was harmless, just conversation, just attention. But late at night, when I replayed his words in my head, I realized how quickly harmless can turn into temptation. One afternoon, I found myself outside tending the garden. The sun was warm, the air heavy with the scent of soil and blooming jasmine. Ethan walked over, leaning casually on the fence that separated our yards. He wore that easy grin, the one that made his eyes crinkle slightly at the edges. "You've got magic hands," he said, nodding at the flowers. "Everything you touch seems to come alive." It was a silly comment, maybe even a throwaway line, but it landed like a spark in dry grass. I felt heat creep up my neck. I laughed it off, brushing dirt from my palms, but deep down I felt something I hadn't felt in years, wanted. From then on, I started noticing him more. The way he carried himself with quiet confidence, the way his voice lowered when he spoke to me, as if sharing something meant only for my ears. When Daniel came home late, I thought of Ethan's voice. When Daniel scrolled through his phone during dinner, I thought of Ethan's eyes. Attentive and unflinching, I hated myself for it. Yet I couldn't stop. The truth about infidelity is that it doesn't begin with betrayal of the body. It begins with betrayal of the heart. And I was already wandering into dangerous territory. Weeks slipped by. Every encounter added fuel to a fire I pretended didn't exist. There was one evening, I still remember it vividly, when Ethan lingered. Outside as the sun set, the sky painted in amber and purple streaks. He leaned on his car, arms crossed, and called out, "You ever feel like you're stuck in a routine you didn't choose?" The question wasn't directed at anyone in particular, but I felt it pierce through me. I stood frozen at my doorstep, words caught in my throat. He smiled when our eyes met, as if he knew exactly what he had done. And in that moment, something shifted inside me. That night, lying beside Daniel as he snored softly, I whispered the truth to myself for the first time. I want more. It terrified me. It thrilled me. Guilt shadowed every thought, but longing outweighed it. I tried to bury the feelings, to convince myself that I was overreacting, imagining things. But the heart doesn't lie. It keeps beating, restless and demanding, until you finally listen. And I listened. The next morning, when Ethan casually offered to help me with a few heavy boxes in the garage, I didn't hesitate. I told myself it was innocent, that neighbors helped each other all the time. But as I opened the garage door and saw him standing there, sunlight catching in his hair, I knew innocence had nothing to do with it anymore. For the first time in years, I felt anticipation curl inside me like a secret, a dangerous secret. And as he stepped closer, brushing past me with that subtle scent of cedar and warmth, I realized the line had already been crossed. Not with touch, not yet, but with everything unspoken. I didn't stop it. I didn't want to. Asterisk, the boxes in the garage were nothing more than an excuse. Old keepsakes, unused tools, a few cartons that Daniel had promised to sort through but never did. They sat there collecting dust, untouched, unimportant, until Ethan stepped inside that dimly lit space with me. Suddenly, every shadow felt alive, every moment charged with a weight I couldn't name. Which one's first? He asked, brushing his hands together as though he were ready for real work. I pointed to a stack near the corner. Though my mind wasn't on boxes at all, I was painfully aware of how close he stood, how the air thickened with his presence. My pulse raced so fast I thought he might hear it. We worked in silence for a while, though silence didn't feel empty anymore. It was full of unspoken things, of glances that lingered a little too long, of brushes that felt deliberate even when they weren't. At one point, as he lifted a heavy carton, his arm brushed against mine. Just skin against skin, yet it was enough to send a jolt through me. "You okay?" he asked softly, catching my expression. I nodded too quickly. "Yeah, just a bit warm in here." His lips curved into a knowing smile. "I don't think it's the room." Those words hung in the air like a secret we had both been circling around for weeks. Neither of us said more, but the truth was already there, shimmering just beneath the surface dot when he set the last box down. He didn't step back immediately. Instead, he stayed close, his breath faintly brushing my cheek. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from anticipation I could no longer deny. "You don't have to say anything," he whispered, as if reading my mind. I know. It should have been my moment to walk away, to put distance between us, to remember the vows I had once made to Daniel. But instead, I stayed rooted in place, frozen in the pull of something stronger than reason. Ethan's hand moved, slow, deliberate, until it hovered just above mine. He didn't grab it, he waited for me to make the choice. And God help me, I did. My fingers slid into his, tentative at first, then desperate. The garage wasn't just a room anymore. It became a world sealed off from everything else, Daniel's. Absence, my guilt, my conscience. All that remained was the electric space between me and Ethan, narrowing with every second. His other hand brushed a stray strand of hair from my face, his touch gentle, reverent almost. My breath caught, and in that suspended moment, I forgot everything else. When his lips finally met mine, it wasn't explosive, it was slow, careful, as though he wanted to savor every second. But beneath the tenderness lay hunger, restrained, but undeniable. My hands clutched at his shirt, pulling him closer, while my mind screamed that this was wrong. Wrong, and yet it felt more right than anything had in years. Every kiss was a betrayal, but also a revelation. Every touch whispered promises I knew he couldn't keep. Still, I let myself drown in it because, for the first time in so long, I felt alive, desired, seemed out the world outside, faded the tick of the clock, the hum of traffic, the reality of who I was and what I was doing. There was only us, lost in a moment that couldn't and shouldn't exist. And then the sound of the side door creaking open shattered everything. I froze, pulling back abruptly, my chest heaving. Ethan stiffened too, his eyes darting toward the entrance. And standing there, framed in the doorway with wide, curious eyes, was Liam, my nephew. He couldn't have been more than 12. his backpack slung over one shoulder, his head tilted in confusion. "Aunt Nora, what are you doing in here?" My heart stopped. Heat rushed to my face, though not from desire anymore, from fear. From shame. Ethan stepped back instantly, putting distance between us, his expression carefully neutral. But I knew what Liam had seen, or at least what he thought he saw. Children weren't fools. Their eyes picked up truths adults tried to hide. I was. "Just asking Ethan to help me with some boxes," I stammered, my voice too quick, too thin. I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "What are you doing here so early?" Liam shrugged, clearly unconvinced, but too young to press further. "Mom dropped me off. Said you wouldn't mind." I nodded, swallowing hard, my pulse still racing. My hands shook as I dusted off my jeans, pretending to busy myself. Ethan gave me one last look, apology, regret, longing all tangled into a single glance. Then he excused himself, slipping out with a muttered goodbye that Liam barely acknowledged. The garage felt colder after he left, as though the fire we had nearly ignited had been doused with ice water. But the heat inside me didn't fade. It burned with shame and yearning, equal parts poison and temptation. Liam, innocent as ever, asked about dinner plans, completely unaware of the storm inside me. I nodded, answering mechanically, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying every moment, every touch, every near-dash discovery. Because if Ethan hadn't pulled away, if Liam had walked in just a minute later, I shuddered, not just at the danger, but at the truth. I wanted it to happen again, and I knew it would. Dinner that evening was a blur. Liam sat across the table, chattering about school, about how his friend had gotten into trouble, about the comic book he wanted to buy. His words floated around me, but I barely heard them. My hands trembled slightly as I set his plate down, forcing my smile to look natural. Inside, I was unraveling. Every time his eyes lifted to meet mine, I wondered, what did he see in that garage? Did he notice the way Ethan and I stood too close, the way my lips looked flushed, the way guilt practically bled out of me? I swallowed down bites of food that tasted like ash. My mind kept replaying that frozen moment, Ethan's hand still warm on mine, his lips lingering on my skin. Liam's small frame filling the doorway like a messenger of judgment. After dinner, when Liam retreated to the living room to watch television, I slipped into the kitchen and gripped the counter until my knuckles whitened. My chest ached. My breath came short. "You crossed a line, Nora," I whispered to myself. "You crossed it and you can't go back." Later that night, when Daniel finally returned from work, Liam ran to greet him with the joy of a child who adored his uncle. Daniel smiled, ruffling Liam's hair before coming to kiss me on the cheek. His kiss felt different, gentle, routine, utterly innocent. I nearly flinched at the contrast between his touch and Ethan's. Guilt swarmed me like a tide. Daniel asked about my day, and I lied. I said it was ordinary, uneventful. I laughed in all the right places, nodded when he complained about deadlines, played the part of the faithful wife. Inside, though, I was splintering apart. That night in bed, I lay awake beside him, staring into the dark. Daniel's breathing soon deepened, steady and oblivious, but sleep refused to come for me. All I could hear was Ethan's voice echoing in my head. "You don't have to say anything." I know. And the worst part, he was right. He knew. I knew. And now, maybe Liam knew too. The days that followed felt like walking across thin ice. Every knock on the door made my heart skip, fearing Liam had told someone, his mother, Daniel, anyone. Every glance from Daniel made me paranoid, as though he sensed a shadow lingering between us. Ethan stayed away at first. Perhaps out of respect, perhaps out of caution, but avoidance only deepened the ache. I missed his attention, his spark, the way he made me feel alive. Desire doesn't die easily. It smolders, waiting for the faintest breath to ignite again. And it did. One afternoon, I caught sight of him across the yard. He was trimming a branch, sweat glistening on his forehead, his shirt clinging to him. Our eyes met for only a second, but it was enough. Enough to remind me that what had started couldn't simply end because of one interruption. That night, lying in bed, I turned over the truth again and again. What was worse? The betrayal itself, or the fact that I wanted to continue despite it? I thought about Liam. Sweet, innocent Liam, walking in at the exact moment when the truth threatened to break open. His presence was a warning, a chance to stop before everything crumbled. But instead of feeling relief, I felt frustration because he had stopped something I wasn't ready to end. The realization chilled me to my core. What kind of woman thinks like that? What kind of wife? What kind of aunt? But the heart is reckless. It doesn't obey reason or vows or the fragile structures we call family. It only obeys its hunger. And mine had been starved too long. I don't know how long this will remain a secret. Secrets have a way of rotting from the inside, seeping through cracks until they're impossible to contain. Maybe Liam will speak up one day. Maybe Daniel will sense it. Maybe Ethan will cross the fence again, and we'll find ourselves back where we left off. But tonight, as I sit by the window watching the streetlights glow, I know one thing with terrifying certainty. The silence between me and Daniel is no longer the loudest thing in my life. It's the memory of Ethan's hands, the ghost of his lips, the temptation that still burns inside me. And the thought that keeps me awake. Heart pounding is this. It wasn't just the risk of getting caught that frightened me. It was the fear of how far I was willing to go to feel alive again.